Hi everyone, welcome. I am Dr. Megan Lee. So that happened maybe 3 weeks ago. And I am here today to talk to you about my whole PhD in 15 minutes. So let's see how that goes. So over 350 million people living in the world experience the symptoms of depression. Let that sink in for a second. Now, the current treatment options that we have for depression include antidepressant medications, talking therapies, and electroconvulsive therapy. And yes, we still do ECT. It is very, very helpful in people who have extreme major depressive disorder, and it still works. However, most of these types of treatments have pretty severe side effects. Long-term memory loss in ECT. For antidepressant medications, there's weight gain and slowing and zombie-like effects, and they're not so nice. Now, I have experienced myself with mental health issues when I was younger, and I've seen people in my family also experience mental health issues, and we went to a GP. First thing we did, what do you think the GP did when we said, kind of feeling sad? What was the thing? What do you think? Antidepressants, prescribed drugs, instantly. No questions about how are you feeling at the moment? What is it that's going on in your life? How are you eating? What sort of exercise are you doing? Anything dramatic happened to you recently? So I began my PhD with the question, well, there's got to be a better way, right? So what I was questioning was, could we look at lifestyle factors like nutrition? Now, changing someone's diet there's no side effects resulting in changing from a healthy to an unhealthy diet. And what I found was, when I started my research, that it seemed that diets high in fresh fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, legumes, and whole grains, and water seemed to be beneficial for other chronic lifestyle diseases like CVD, diabetes, obesity, but no one had looked at mental health and how nutrition impacts mental health. And I was shocked when I started my PhD. The first paper that ever has been written on dietary patterns and depression was published in 2008, which was crazy to me. Now, there's also the other side of the coin, where we're looking at diets, particularly high in ultra-processed, refined and sugary foods, and how they seem to be contributing to the symptoms of depression. But no one had really looked at that either. So I came along in my PhD and decided I'm going to answer these questions. Is there a relationship between dietary patterns and depression? Now, the problem in the field at the time was that everybody was looking at nutrients. Omega-3s, premium probiotics, complex carbohydrates. But what they were missing, it was very reductionist, because they were missing is that we don't eat omega-3s. We don't eat pre and probiotics by themselves in isolation. We eat these massive diets and they change every day, and they're different depending on season. So I was like, let's look at whole dietary patterns and depression. So my 3 questions were, what is the current state of the evidence between dietary patterns and depression risk? Is there an association between diet quality and depressive symptoms in Australian women over time? And I specifically was interested in that population because women tend to have higher rates of depression. However, I think that the male kind of depression statistics are underreported because men don't go and seek help, right? Yeah, totally. And my other question was, what are individuals' experiences with food and mood? So the field at the time had quite a bit of quantitative research, mostly cross-sectional and not a lot of RCT, but no one had gone and asked people, well, how do you feel when you eat this? Or does something that you've eaten make you feel a different way? No one had done that. So off I went. The first thing I did was an umbrella review, like Madison's systematic review of all the systematic reviews and meta-analysis that had ever been conducted in the field. Crazy. There were 18 systematic reviews at the time. There's a couple more now. And overall, what I found across all 200 or so publications in diet and depression was that healthy dietary patterns were protective against depressive symptoms, particularly the Mediterranean dietary pattern. So the same sort of thing, fresh fruits, nuts, seeds, legumes, whole grains, but higher amounts of legumes than Western dietary patterns, moderate amount of oily fish, very low in red meat, and moderate amounts of dark chocolate and red wine. Yay! And that is the best dietary pattern in the world for other physical chronic lifestyle disease types of things as well. So, what we also found was that unhealthy dietary patterns, particularly ones from Western countries like Australia and America and the UK, were contributing to the symptoms of depression. However, what was interesting about what I found was that there was a lot of, when I used the grade tool to look at risk of bias, there was a lot of unexplained heterogeneity, which means, basically in plain English, that everyone was using a different scale to measure diet and everyone was using a different scale to measure depression. So none of them were comparable. We also had a high risk of bias across all the papers and quite a lot of publication bias, which means there's a lot of naughty researchers out there in diet and depression who are burying non-significant papers. Not good. So I decided to add to the field my longitudinal study. So I looked at 50,000 women across 25 years from 1996 to 2018, and I particularly was interested in diet quality, high versus low diet quality and depressive symptoms. What I found in this one was very interesting. Women who had a healthy diet or a high quality diet had less depressive symptoms than those who had a lower diet quality. So it was starting to be the same as what I had found in this umbrella review. My favourite thing from this starter analysis, because I looked at diet quality, I also looked at fruit and vegetable consumption because I was a bit sneaky and went off and did a bit of a sub-analysis. What I found was over 25 years, the women in the study for fruit and vegetable consumption, so what is the recommended daily allowance? 2 and 5, 2 fruit, 5 veg. How many percentage of women across this time period were eating that? How many? Good, Emma, very good. 4% of women over 25 years were eating the 2 and 5. Yeah? Those that were eating the 2 and 5 had less depressive symptoms. Those that weren't, higher. Yeah? Another interesting finding from this was like, well, people who have depression, the last thing that they want to do is eat a salad. It's hard to get people who are experiencing the symptoms of depression to eat healthy. So I was like, well, what if we reduce the amount of veggies? Because they're hard to eat. So I did an analysis of 2 and 3. 2 fruit, 3 veggie. Same thing. Much higher amount of people. So I think it was 40% of women were eating 2 and 3, which also means 60% weren't. Anyway, of the 40% of people who are eating 2 and 3, same findings, exactly identical findings. The significance levels, the effect sizes were the same, which meant that we could recommend to people who are experiencing the symptoms of depression, women, that don't worry about the 2 and 5. You can eat the 2 and 3 and still have the same impact, which was great. My final study was a bunch of focus groups we did here, staff and students from SCU and a couple of, a whole group of accredited practicing dietitians from Griffith. And we asked them, basically, what is your experiences with food and mood? And what they told me was, number one, and it was kind of interesting because none of what I found in my focus groups was in the quant studies. What did we find? We found social context was important. It's not about what you eat, but who you eat with, the environment that you're in. I can sit at my desk and eat a salad, looking at my computer, and I am not going to get the same impact from that meal or the same nutrition from that meal as I am going to get sitting down with my friends from work, having a burger and a salad. Yeah? What was the second thing that I found? Bio-individuality. Everybody's different. Everybody's experiences mood differently, and everyone experiences like nutrition differently. So we can't really be forcing, thank you Australian Dietary Guidelines, the same thing onto everybody. Everybody should be having individualistic types of recommendations for food and mood. The third thing we found was intuitive eating. Does anyone know what that means? Eat what you want. Great, excellent. So,
And when you want.
and when you want, eat what you want, eat when you want. Food restriction is bad for your mental health. Dieting is bad for your mental health. Don't do it. Eat what you want, eat when you want. Get a little bit of education in kind of what's healthy for you, but don't be restricting yourself. If you want the donut, eat the donut. Trust me, I eat the donut. What else did I find? Food security. It's all well and good for me to stand up here and say, eat your fruit and veg, eat your legumes, eat your whole grains. Stop eating McDonald's. But people who don't have the security of being able to afford fresh fruit, vegetables, nuts, seeds, meats at the moment, how much is food at the moment? What is going on with inflation? It's ridiculous. So we're not standing up here and saying, you have to do this, because some people can't afford to. So we're talking food security and insecurity. We're talking about those, what are they called, food deserts, where you can't access fresh, whole foods. What was the last one? There was one more. What was it? Oh, the bidirectional relationship between depression and food and nutrition. So what we don't know, and what the individuals in the focus group said, was, which came first? Is the unhealthy dietary pattern because you're feeling depressed? Or is it the depression causing the unhealthy dietary pattern? And we don't know. We can't assess that without RCTs, right? So the field needs more of that. How am I going for time?
You've got 3 minutes.
Oh my gosh, I did so well. That was my PhD in 12 minutes. So I submitted November 2021, got my examiner's reports back in April 2022. So it's going to take about 5 months potentially to get those examiner's reports back. Katie is not loving that. I got a very nice phone call on Good Friday, actually, from my supervisor saying, you must immediately ring me. So I rang her and she's like, your examiner's reports came in. Now, when I submitted my PhD, I thought it was rubbish. I'm like, I'm just submitting. I'm sick of looking at you. I know there's a lot in there that I could improve. Don't care. It's been 3 years. I have had enough. And I submitted, fully expecting examiners to come back with heaps of stuff that I knew was wrong with it. Guess what actually happened? Professor Andrew Scully, who is the leading scientist and researcher in the field of diet and depression, 0 corrections.
Yeah.
And I was camping at the time and had like no internet when I got this phone call, and I'm like, said to my son's father, I said, I just got to go get some internet. So I ran up a hill and I'm like, I've got to tell my writing retreat girlfriends, Katie, Emma, who else is here? Shay, Jubilee. I've got to tell my writing retreat friends. So I get some internet. And as I was doing that, I opened Twitter, and this was on Twitter from Professor Andrew Scully. My stomach dropped. I was like, what? So very, very exciting for me. So I got no corrections from Andrew Scully. I got minor corrections from my other reviewer, which was okay. Took me a little while to get through those. Some very, very good points and really strengthened my thesis, which was amazing.
1 minute.
All right. So what next? This is me holding an eggplant. How embarrassing. I only realised this the other day. I'm like, why is it an eggplant? Anyway, so this is what I'm doing next. I have now got a tenured position at Bond University as a senior teaching fellow, which is very nice. I got that probably 3 months before my PhD was submitted. If anyone wants to come and talk to me about what I did that got me my job at Bond and how you can do that too, come and see me. It's extensive, so it takes some time. I need another whole 20 minutes to talk about that. But come and see me. I've got some really good tips. What else am I doing? Oh, so one of the things that really stood out to me from my PhD, which I didn't even write into the discussion or the conclusion, which is really very bold to me now, is that umbrella review, longitudinal study, focus groups. The one thing that came out of all those, and it was like similar across the whole thing, was, hang on a second, all these foods that I'm recommending to people for mental health are, Carl, what are they? Plants. All of them. No dairy, no meat. I'm like, what? Now I'm an omnivore, but from my PhD, I am plant predominant now, but I still eat meat. Plants. Eat more plants. Yeah? So now I am positioning myself in the world of research as the leading plant-based diet and depression researcher. That's what I'm doing. We're doing a prospective study over 10 years where we're following people who are about to change to a vegan vegetarian diet. We're going to ask them all the sorts of things about diet, mental health, but also I find it really strange that this diet that I'm promoting is protective against symptoms, but vegans and vegetarians have higher rates of depression than the rest of the general population. Why? Kate, why? You don't know? Does anyone know? Potentially. We're starting to look into eating disorder behaviours in vegans and vegetarians. Emma? Could be deficiencies, but vegans and vegetarians are very good at supplementing. What I think it is they care about things external to themselves. They care about animal welfare. They care about environmental concerns. And they're kind of ostracised because of the food that they eat for some reason. And I think that's it. But I don't know that because I haven't done the study yet. So we're doing this prospective study and we're going to test that. Yeah? That's me. Any questions?
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
I was finding it one of your first groups, right?
Yes?
So, like, eating behaviour is one of the hardest things to change. I mean, I don't know.
Definitely.
So, how do we get change? I mean, this is like a big question.
I think the main problem is the food system that we're in. Every day we are constantly bombarded with messages about foods that are not healthy for us. And the foods that are unhealthy are cheaper than the foods that are healthy. That needs to change. That is exactly what I want to do. Yeah, and the only way that we can do it from where we are is by putting out more research. But it would be really cool. And what I really talked about in my discussion and conclusion chapters was about government policy and practice. There's actually no mention of nutrition in the government policies for mental health. Yes, and that's all my intuitive eating stuff as well. Yes.
We
So
have a question back here.
Yep.
Yep. Doing your longitudinal study, how are you accounting for impacts externally? Like what scales were you using to accommodate for pre-existing mental health, traumatic backgrounds, or currently experiencing adverse effects, or anything else that you could? How did you kind of mitigate that so that wasn't influencing?
So one of the really interesting things about the Australian longitudinal study of women's health that I accessed was it asked every question ever possible about anything to do with women's health. So I scoured the survey, and it was very long. I scoured the surveys for any covariating or confounding factors that could influence depression, and I adjusted for them.
Do you have any significances?
Social context was the highest predictor out of everything. Who we eat with, what context we eat in, and that was supported by the focus group studies, but hasn't been really looked at in the field at all yet. So social connectedness is really important. Any other questions? Yes.
So in your research, in Ayurvedic literature, did you come across that, and what's
I didn't come across that in the literature, but one of our focus group members, Kate, talked all about that. In fact, there were 2 focus group members who talked about Ayurvedic and how it works. So very, very exciting stuff that I potentially would love to look into in the future. I think my last point that I wanted to say to everybody is it's not hard to, like, the steps to good mental health through nutrition is not hard. You just got to eat more plants. So the rule is try and eat 30 different plants a week. Now that sounds hard, right? There's only 4% of us eating 2 and 5. But when you think about plants, they don't have to be fruit and veg. They can be nuts, seeds, legumes, whole grains, herbs, spices, herbal teas. Anything that's a plant can be included in your 30. So maybe this week, just try and write down every plant that you eat and see how many you do. Email me. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Megan. Excellent. And she's giving us some homework there.
Yeah.